The top stories from ABC News. Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe has appeared in public for the first time since the military placed him under house arrest. Mr Mugabe attended a graduation ceremony in the capital where he handed out degrees. There had been reports of a possible military coup after the 93-year-old was detained following a power struggle over his successor. Polling in marginal seats in Queensland have placed the Labor Party strongly in several key swing seats. The polls reveal Labor Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk is close to victory ahead in marginal seats, including Brisbane, the Gold Coast and Ipswich. Both Labor and the LNP continue to lose ground to One Nation, creating three-way contests across the state. A man linked to the notorious Ibrahim brothers remains in a serious condition in hospital after being shot in the back in Sydney's west overnight. The man was found with a gunshot wound at a home in Marylands last night. Police say the attack was not a drive-by shooting and no one has been arrested. And Australia has retained the Women's Ashes with a 6-wicket victory over England in the opening 2020 match in Sydney. Beth Mooney starred for the home side, hitting an unbeaten 86 off 56 balls.
Now, two key issues have topped the political agenda this week: the same-sex marriage postal survey result and the legislation to change the Marriage Act, as well as the ongoing citizenship saga. Well, to discuss these and other top stories of the week, we're joined by Labor MP Pat Conroy and Liberal MP Craig Kelly. Welcome to both of you.
Yeah, great to be back again.
Morning.
All right, now, so let's start with same-sex marriage. It was an emphatic win for the yes vote, and this is how the Prime Minister reacted to that news.
The Australian people have spoken in their millions, and they have voted overwhelmingly yes. And now it is up to us here in the Parliament of Australia to get on with it, to get on with the job the Australian people have tasked us to do and get this done this year before Christmas.
So, Craig, before Christmas, will it be done?
I think so. Look, firstly, my electorate came back and voted yes. It was 58-42, and I gave a commitment, whichever way that my electorate voted, that is how I would vote in the Parliament. So even though I said originally my position was no, I'll be voting yes in the Parliament. So what we now have to just finalise what the exact legislation will be and where we will put those exemptions or protections for religious freedoms.
Well, that is the finer point of the matter now, isn't it? Because we have seen, particularly on the coalition side of politics, quite a tussle emerging around exactly how the legislation should be shaped. So do you see that goal of before Christmas actually being achievable?
I hope so. The question is, where do you actually draw the line? Now, I think everyone agrees that, say, a mosque or an imam shouldn't be forced to conduct a same-sex marriage in a particular mosque, and that would be wrong if the government would prosecute them because they did that. So that exemption should also apply to churches. They should apply to church halls. How far do you actually extend it? Do you extend it to, there's been a lot of talk about the florists and the cake bakers. What about a Christian religious singing group or an MC? Where do you actually draw that line where someone says, because of a genuinely held religious belief that I have, I think I shouldn't be forced to do this?
Pat, are you confident that there'll be an easy passage of the bill, or are you expecting some blocks there, some amendments along the way?
Well, this is a real test for Malcolm Turnbull's leadership. Can he stare down the Conservative reactionaries in his party room? We've wasted $100 million on a very divisive debate to tell us exactly what every piece of political opinion polling has said, which is the majority of Australian people want this. We've got enough time to get it through, but Malcolm has to stand up to people in his party room that want to weaken anti-discrimination laws. The Dean Smith bill is a fine bill. It represents all the recommendations from the bipartisan Senate Committee into Marriage Equality. It preserves protections for religious groups. That preserves the church hall example that Craig talked about. That's sufficient. We shouldn't be going down the path of weakening anti-discrimination laws. And if Turnbull folds to the bigots in his party room, then that's a massive hit to his leadership and a massive hit to equality in this country.
Does this have the potential, though, to hurt Labor? Because, as Craig mentioned, he has a commitment to vote according to his electorate. We've seen those key electorates in Western Sydney, for instance, where the strongest no votes were registered in the country. Does that have the potential to hurt Labor at some point down the track?
I don't think so. We had a really good debate at our 2015 National Conference. In the lead up to that, many of the Western Sydney MPs came out and said, we're going to vote yes. Our party resolved that when we won government, the entire party would vote yes within 100 days. So we've had a federal election since then where all those electorates have delivered huge swings to Labor. So they've had a chance to process the position of their MPs and the Labor Party policy on being pro-marriage equality, and they've still given those MPs an overwhelming endorsement. So there's people out there that obviously aren't particularly supportive of marriage equality, but they make their decisions on a whole range of issues and they're overwhelmingly pro-Labor. Some of those seats, like Jason Clare's in Blaxland was the most anti, has got a Labor Party margin of about 20%. So they know what Labor Party stands for and they support that.
Could I just pick up on one point Pat said there? I find it objectionable, Pat, that you'd say there were bigots in the Liberal Party room. Just because people have a different opinion in same-sex marriage doesn't make them a bigot. There are many Labor electorates where the majority voted against same-sex marriage. Does that mean that all those people are bigots? The entire Labor Party in 2010 had a policy of not changing same-sex marriage. Were all the Labor Party members bigots then? You can't just call people bigots because they may disagree with you.
We had a free vote on marriage equality in the Parliament in 2011.
That's fine.
The real point here is, do you support what Kevin Andrews said, which basically said that people could discriminate on the basis of someone being Jewish or Islamic? The key thing is, if I can finish, Craig, is religious groups have protections and they have freedoms, and that's absolutely right. But why should we allow a florist or a baker, to use that ubiquitous example, to discriminate on the basis of someone's sex, a sexual orientation? Why is that allowed when they can't refuse to provide services to a lesbian commitment ceremony right now? Why should they be able to refuse services to a lesbian wedding? It's the next step down the path to having no blacks allowed in the front bars of pubs. That is the logical extension of these sort of prejudices.
You're talking about a genuinely held religious belief. Now, I'm not exactly sure where that line should be drawn, but there's obviously some areas of grey in it. Surely this is a debate that we can have sensibly without calling each other bigots.
Craig, does this result strengthen the Prime Minister's position in the party?
Oh, look, the Prime Minister has a very strong position in the party. And I think the Prime Minister should be given some credit on this. And also the former Prime Minister, Tony Abbott. We decided that we would, at the last election, have a policy to resolve this, to give every single Australian a say in that vote. And yes, it was an expensive way to go down that track. But I think if you look at the overall results, the high rate, 80% participation, I think you have to say this was a successful process, and the Prime Minister deserves credit for this.
Are you in favour of the proposal being put forward by the Attorney General George Brandis, which is seeking to build consensus within the coalition by looking at incorporating Article 18 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights as a way of actually handling those key concerns around political
Look, I think this is a debate.
religious freedom.
This is a debate we should have. We should do it quickly. We should look at the options, look at what are some of the perhaps unintended consequences. But most of all, I'm happy to get this debate over and done with so I can get this legislation passed before the Christmas break.
All right, well, another week in Parliament, another resignation. This time, it was Jackie Lambie.
It is with great regret to inform the Chamber and my colleagues of my resignation. I've been found to be ineligible by way of dual citizenship. I love my father to death and I do not blame him for this.
So, Pat, you can serve for your country, but you can't serve in Parliament.
Oh, look, I think there's a fair number of people who think that that part of the Constitution is out of date and doesn't reflect modern society, although it's not our multicultural aspects, it's actually Anglos that have been caught up rather than new Australians. So I think there are some people who think that's antiquated, but ultimately it's the Constitution, and if the politicians can't follow the Constitution, then how can we ask any other Australian to follow the law? So I've got sympathy for Jackie and the other people in this situation, but ultimately people have to do their homework.
So have we come to the end of this yet? Have we found the solution? Because I know that there was the agreement between the Prime Minister and the Opposition Leader around full disclosure by the 1st of December. Is that going to clear this up?
My understanding is when we get back to Parliament, we all have to have full disclosure by the 1st of December, showing that where we were born, where our parents were born, the time that they were born. And from there, if there's any question marks, that will then be referred to the High Court. Now, from what I understand, there's several Labor members. There's also a question about, did they actually do it in time? Did they receive the clearance? What does it mean by reasonable endeavours? These are questions I think should be put to the High Court. And I think if there's any question mark, a 1% question mark, that should be referred to the High Court so we can get this once and behind us over and done with, and then for parliaments in the future, everyone will know exactly what the rules are.
Pat, the previous week we saw John Alexander, member for Bennelong, the Liberal. He was forced to resign. Now the Labor Party are putting in Christine Keneally as a candidate. You must be very confident that she's got a good shot.
Oh, I think she's a fabulous candidate. She lives a lot closer to the electorate than John Alexander, and she's got a great public profile, having helped fight for the state over many years. So I think she's a good, strong candidate. She's already out on the hustings. We saw a little set-to on the corner between her and John Alexander, and it's giving the people of Bennelong a real choice. This is a referendum on the Turnbull government. Do people want their attacks on the health system, cuts to education, or do they want to say, end of the chaos, end of the division, let's return to a government governing for all?
Great.
So it's a real test for the Turnbull government.
Is it going to be a tight contest?
We've seen it will be a tight contest. We've seen a bit of a sugar hit in the polls. But I think what will happen over time, Christina Keneally coming back in, will give people a chance to remember the spectre of Labor that we had here in New South Wales. That diabolical government that we had for many years, probably the worst government in our nation's history, that Christina Keneally was the Premier of. And that was the whole problem, Pat. A disastrous government, corruption through the government. We've seen government ministers sent to jail, ministers that Keneally herself put back into cabinet. I think this actually opens up and reminds people of how bad Labor can actually be.
But it is proving to be a tight contest, as we mentioned. Polling is showing that
all by-elections, you will see every by-election, as a rule of thumb, you have a bigger swing than you do in any other election. So this will be a tight contest, absolutely.
What this just demonstrates is the Liberal Party is just intent on flinging mud. Christina Keneally was endorsed. She was called an ICAC hero by Watson, the chief ICAC prosecutor. She did her best to clear out and stop Eddie O'B doing some very dodgy things on Australian Water Holdings, where Arthur Sinodinos was involved and was cleared of his involvement. So just throwing this mud just shows how desperate they are, because they know if they lose Bennelong, or if there's a significant swing against Malcolm Turnbull, then his leadership's in huge strife.
I'll do smart.
Huge strife.
I will say what a great candidate John Alexander has been. He has done a fantastic job in that seat. He is a great local member, and I'm quite confident that John will do very, very well in this by-election.
is it also a bit of a sign of disarray that we've also had the National Senator Bill O'Sullivan wanting to push for the Banking Royal Commission in Parliament this week, an issue that I don't think the PM has been too keen to hear raised again.
Absolutely, there are some issues around the banks. Now, on the Economics Committee, we've actually been looking at this, we've been doing an inquiry into this. It's clear that we're actually making progress. Now, if you have a Royal Commission, what will that actually do? What you want to do is be able to get justice and compensation for those people who have been wronged by the bank. And that's what we've done. We put a tribunal in place that will do that. A Royal Commission will not do that. It'll be a talk fest that will just cost a fortune in legal fees for lawyers.
Quick response.
Utter rubbish. If it was good enough for a Royal Commission into the trade unions to clean up so-called behaviour, why not into the big banks that have been ripping off Australians left, right and centre? The Economics Committee, which I've been on, is a paper tiger. Each MP gets 10 minutes with a CEO every 6 months.
What terms of reference for the Commission?
The real reason that we should do a Royal Commission is the banks are opposed to it. They're scared of it. They're not scared of the House Economics Committee because it's empty. We developed them in consultation with key groups like consumers. The key test for people like George Christensen and all these nationals in the House of Reps who are happy to bash the banks in their electorate but are wilting little wallflowers in Parliament, they've got a chance. We just need one of them. If one crosses the floor, we can get a Banking Royal Commission and deliver real justice to the millions of Australians who've been ripped off by banks.
Justice is being done
it's
by the
just
tribunals
talk,
that we are setting up. A Royal Commission will not have the power to award compensation to people. This is the fallacy of the Royal Commission. You want to have a tribunal system where people who have been wronged by the bank can bring their case, have it heard, have a determination. And that is what the Coalition have done.
We're running out of time. Let's move to the most controversial issue of the week, shall we? The Ashes
Outside of
selection.
That's right.
Now, perhaps the most left-wing selection being that of Tim Payne as wicket-keeper. And this is the justification, I should say, of the head of selectors, Trevor Hohns.
With Tim, I think it's been widely acknowledged for a small amount of time now that he is regarded as the best gloveman in the country.
I am happy with the makeup. I think we've got a good balanced side.
Pat, you happy with the makeup?
Well, I'm a big supporter of Payne. We've been really searching for a really great wicketkeeper since Gilchrist retired. No disrespect to the ones who filled in.
Well,
But
Brad
I think
Hatton.
Brad Hatton was fine, but he was no Gilchrist. And maybe I'm pie in the sky hoping for another Gilchrist. But I think that Payne will be good. I think Renshaw was a bit unlucky. We've just got to beat the Poms, and I don't care who's in it as long as we beat the Poms.
Are we going to do it though?
Yeah, look, I think I agree with Pat on this. Bit tough on Renshaw, but Bancroft, fantastic performance in the Sheffield Shield, deserves his position. But I'm really looking forward to Stark, Cummings and Hazelwood ripping into those Englishmen on a bit of a green wicket somewhere. Let's hope we can see that real soon.
Would you want to be a Prime Minister or a head of selectors for the Ashes?
Oh no, I think I'll be Prime Minister. One of the great chances of Prime Minister, is to sit in the Boxing Day Test in Melbourne, sort of thing. So I think the Prime Minister will be right behind the Aussies, and so will the rest of the Australian public.
We need a new TV set up in a lodge. That looked very dodgy.
Well, the women have shown the way, so let's see what the men can do. Pat
Let's try
Conroy,
Phyllis Perry.
Craig Kelly, wonderful
you.
to have you both. Thank you so much.